Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve. Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, February the 27th, 2022. This is episode 25. We've titled this one, God Floods the World, and the TVA floods Tennessee. This is one Tim has been wanting to talk about for a while. He's mentioned the flood in several episodes, including the episode that we did on Nibiru and the Inumialish. Thank you, Michael Crow, for watching, helping us remember that in the middle of the chat when we couldn't think of it. There's been a lot going on in the world since we got together. It seems like the Russia story has really developed, but I think we'll save that one for our Wednesday broadcast. We'll get a little bit more into that. There's a lot to talk about tonight on this subject. My name is Cliff. We're coming to you live from Carter County, Tennessee. I'm joined by Tim and Dustin. Say hello, fellas.
Tim. Okay.
We're on the main camera there now. Yeah. So say hello to the camera, fellas.
fellas. Well, I mean, fellas. Golf, what are you drinking? Is this straight black or is this some kind of special something that you got here?
Whatever, Cliff.
What'd you make him, Cliff?
It's good old black red can.
It's black red can.
That's right.
Well, we starting with the TVA?
Yeah, I was going to get into the little bit of that. Before we get on to the flood, I want to make this a show that people who are from our area can enjoy and people who are not from our area can enjoy. So I'm going to kind of get into a little bit of the history of the TVA in our area and the history of the TVA in general, as we've spoken about them before at length in a couple of episodes pertaining to the smart pole development in Johnson City, Tennessee. That's actually what started me wanting to do the podcast, was the fact that nobody knew that was going on, that we were a pilot program for smart poles and smart cities here in Johnson City, Tennessee. I say we. Don't live in Johnson City, but I've frequented Johnson City. I work in Johnson City. I've played music in Johnson City for over a decade, and it holds a special place in my heart, and I care about what happens there, even if I don't live there. So I thought it was a pretty big deal that the TVA was putting in these poles that were collecting data from everyone who walks through Johnson City, where they'll be putting them in the King's Commons and the Founders Park. They have an array of sensors to collect data from you, all kinds of different stuff. We've gone into it in other episodes, and you can look up what all a smart pole can do. They've actually not released which sensors they will have on them. They've basically said they will be used to help prevent crime and to light the area. Yeah. So I'm not aware of a large amount of crime within the park areas, but I guess if you're walking in there, maybe you feel more secure if a camera's watching you or something. I'm bumping the table here, but the TVA also, it's been in our area for since it was created in, I think it was 1947. It was before that. Sorry, it was during the war. They decided they needed to pump up the energy production, and there was a lot going on at the time with the Great Depression, and like the Dust Bowl, you got to look at how our area was at the time. It was mostly farmers, and there was a lot of timber cutting, a lot of farming, and they kind of depleted the resources of the area. It was some of the finest hardwood that was available in the country, and a lot of pine too, but it was not very well taken care of as far as replanting and making sure they didn't deplete whole sections of the forest. And they about ran it dry. And not only that, you had a lot of flooding in the area at the time, because we get, in the winter especially, we get a lot of rainfall up here, and when we have snow melts up on the mountains, they all come down into the river, and it overflows the banks of the whole river system all the way down through Knoxville and Chattanooga and on even further than that. So the TVA was created to deal with kind of all those problems, and in addition to that, the soil had been depleted
which would cause more flooding.
Exactly. A lot of the nutrients in the soil were not only washed away by the flooding, but you also had farmers who really were not aware of what nutrients were in the soil and what nutrients the crops they were growing were depleting. So they were growing the same things every year in the same places, and lots of important things were coming out of the soil, and then they weren't producing well, and then you didn't have the roots of those plants to help hold that soil in place. And then when the water came down, that washed away even more of the nutrients, so it became very difficult for people to grow anything. So you had the war was happening in Europe, and we required a lot of energy for production of weapons, of steel for vehicles, for tanks, for not fertilizer but nitrous for explosives, and phosphates for tracer rounds, and all kinds of different things they were using. So we really had to up our production in this area and all over the southeast in support of the war effort, and not to mention Oak Ridge and what they were doing over there required a tremendous amount of power. So the TVA was tasked with finding answers to these problems, basically. And these were important issues that really did need to be dealt with. I think the more issue that I have with the TVA, I guess, is that maybe in wartime, you really need an authority, so to speak, to take care of these problems quickly in an efficient manner, and maybe with less accountability to the people because you're in the middle of a war. Okay, I can see that argument. But I guess my issue is maybe once that emergency is over and the TVA has kind of done its job, maybe, you know, we can kind of move to other means where we have either more say in it, or it's at least not a private company that's owned by the federal government that we really just kind of have to live with whatever they do. Because they did do a lot of good things for the region. For example, the flooding was really bad, and they really minimized that by putting in the dams. They put in the hydroelectric dams. Actually, we had one here, Wilbur Dam, up in I think it's, let me orient myself there. I think it's kind of east of the Watauga Dam.
And Earth Dam, or?
Yes, the Earthen Dam. Wilbur Dam is actually
The little one.
Yes, and it kind of looks more futuristic than Watauga Dam, but it was built over 100 years ago, and it was not built by the TVA. The TVA actually purchased it in 1945.
The TVA, who they brought it from?
They bought it from it was actually the Bristol Utility and Electric and Power Company at the time. That was who owned it, and TVA bought it from them as part of basically TVA taking over all the waterways.
And the little one right here was built before the big Earth Dam.
Yes, it was.
The big Earth Dam isn't impressive. Like the very first time I saw it, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, it's like
My parents were like, "It's that big pile of dirt over there."
Yeah, and it doesn't. And you would think, looking at them, you'd think that one was built first because it looks more low tech.
Pile of dirt. I was more impressed, and probably still am, by the giant hole next to it.
Yeah, the overflow. Yeah, I'll find a picture of this here. Pull that up. Here's one picture of the earthen dam there, just kind of as a big pile of earth. But this is actually a hydroelectric dam too.
Is it?
Yeah, and I honestly didn't know that for a long time.
I thought it was retaining. I just thought it was for retaining.
I did too.
Okay.
Well, it actually has two large generators that produce 66 megawatts of power, which is quite a bit. The small dam there, Little Wilbur, that we showed the picture of, it actually produces about 11 megawatts, and it has 4 generators in it, 4 turbines in it. This one has 2 big turbines in it. When the TVA bought it had 2 turbines in it, the Wilbur Dam did, and then when the TVA bought it, they installed another one, and then it had another one subsequently installed in the 50s. So it's up to 4 now, and it's still, they had to actually move the controlway because there was a flood before it was in the 1940s. It was before the Watauga Dam construction was completed. So they had to move the control shack back here because it was destroyed in the flood. But most of Wilbur remains intact, and it looks very similar to Norris Dam as far as...
Where's this one at?
This one is north of Knoxville. It's about 20 minutes north of Knoxville, and it was one of the most important ones that was created by the TVA, and it was to control the river coming down through Knoxville, the Tennessee River coming down through Knoxville, and it went on down to the Mississippi and went through most of Tennessee on its way. So it was very important to control that. It was one of the worst ones for overflowing, and it also took away a lot of the stuff out of the good soil and good nutrients out of the plains around it. So and when that one came up, there's one of the criticisms that people had about the TVA when they did all this, among other things, was I think primarily that so many people were relocated forcibly. They only actually had to move 5 people by force out of their homes in order to complete their project. They had to remove 30.
Like all the dams, or just
for all the TVAs. They actually had
forcefully. Okay.
Yes, they had to take people out by force, and 5. I don't think anyone was hurt, but they had to take people out and force them to move.
I wonder how many people, because you've been up in these modern woods, and even the mountains today are still pretty thick with people that you would never know were there until, like, it always amazes me around fall when the leaves start hitting the ground and you start looking out, I forgot that house was even there. When did that house get there? Because the trees hide everything. So I wonder how many people just got, oh brother, where art thou? And they just got hit with the water because they didn't even, how would if the town just went away?
I think they pretty well knew where most people were at as far as going around. They had a retired school teacher, or he was a school teacher. I'm trying to find his name here because I don't remember. But he went around, and he was somebody from this area, and somebody that people trusted, and he was able to go around and convince these people, and he was convinced too. It wasn't like he was, just some sellout for the TVA. He believed in it too, because he saw what electricity could do for people. And the TVA, when they were trying to change people's mind about it and wanted people to come around to their side, they'd show them the wonder of electricity and how that you could get so much more work done because you could use electricity to do these tasks and not have to stay with them the whole time. You could use electric stove, and not have to build a fire and wait on it to heat up, and everything that comes with that. You just turn on the eye and then you had heat. The same with electric lights. You didn't have to tend to several lamps throughout the house that were constantly running out. You just flipped a switch, and so people saw this and were easily convinced in a lot of cases by the wonders of it. But there were many that did not like it, and you can't blame them, because a lot of these people, when you talk to their descendants, or we see, actually WBIR out of Knoxville, the local news station, did a really good documentary on the flooding of the area, and Norris Dam in particular, where they go and they talk to survivors, or maybe not survivors, but descendants of people, and in a couple cases people who were actually there. And they said that most of the people who didn't like it were because they were happy. Even though they were poor, they didn't know they were poor. They all worked together and they tended to their gardens, and everything was hard, but that was just the way it was, and they didn't know any different, so they were still happy. But they actually had to move about 3,000 people, or 3,000 families, in order to flood all the areas that they did to create the system of reservoirs that the TVA controls now. But near us, in the town of Butler, it was the only actual incorporated town that had to be removed to be flooded. And there were people there who didn't want to be moved, but everybody eventually did. At first it wasn't, they were kind of like, we just don't care. We're just going to take our money and go find us a place of land, and we're not going to worry about keeping the town together. But then, like, when the time came and it was getting close to the time for it to flood, they all got together really quick and said, hey, where are we going to move this thing? We're going to have to kind of stick together if we're going to survive out here, because the way we have been living for so long. So the town created a nonprofit to create a new town, and they started moving the homes, a lot of them, on rollers. And actually, when Norris was created, this was, let me find you this picture of this. See, I sent myself an email of the picture that I wanted to show you. There it is. And this store right here, they actually moved this store on logs. They moved it over a mile, and it stayed open the whole time. So people would come in while they were moving the town and just go to the store, and it was just rolling along. And I thought that was pretty cool. But you also had a story in Butler of these people up there. This is the construction of the dam, of the Watauga Dam, when they were about to flood Butler. They went to bed on Monday night in Butler, and then they moved their home and went to bed in a completely different Butler, the new Butler, the next night on Tuesday. So you had a lot of people moving it, and they reestablished the town, and they created that nonprofit to graph out and zone the areas of land and decide what was going to be residential and commercial and whatnot. And, basically made themselves a really nice town on the edge of a nice lake there. And everybody was, compensated for their land, and was able to get a new piece of land right there on the edge of the lake. So ultimately, the people who were involved with this said that most of the people they knew, even if they did not like it at the time, their lives were ultimately improved by it. And this is from the people that it happened to. So, again, while I don't necessarily agree with the methods and don't necessarily, think that was the best way that it could have been done, there was a lot of good achieved by it. You also had the ability to transport goods easily, because you had rivers at different levels with big waterfalls, right? So they would build what they call locks on them, which were concrete shells, to where you could fill it up with water, the boat could come in, and then you could slowly lower it down and then open it up, and you could open up the Tennessee River in particular to more navigation coming in from the north, and it opened up the area to more industrialization. You had we had the Bimberg Corporation here, and then after the Second World War, we had the North American Rayon Corporation, which really opened up our ability in our area, to send goods upriver and downriver. So you know, it really did improve a lot of things, and they worked with the University of Tennessee to help with fertilizing and teaching farmers new methods, and a lot of that was done in a method that allowed for people to retain their independence rather than, you know, being relying on the government the whole time, or relying on the TVA the whole time. So it was done with an aim to improve the lives of, you know, the individual people that were affected by the decisions, whether or not that was, you know, the main goal. That was a side effect of it, and it does seem like that the people involved in putting and doing the programs did really care about the people of the area, and were actually trying to help improve their lives. So, show you a few more pictures here before we get on to the biblical flood.
Did you happen to do any investigation on moving the Cherokee tribe from our area to North Carolina?
No, was that for?
That's what I'm wondering. I'd heard a rumor. I can't name right now, but I'm pretty sure one of the prime reasons that they moved, and for anybody who might stumble across this, it's not from Elizabeth, and it's a real issue, or it was a real issue for construction companies for a really long time, where you would try to dig somewhere and all of a sudden you'd hit pottery or a bone, and now you're not allowed to bury. It really limits what you're allowed to build. And it's because the Cherokee Indian Reservation used to be in Carter County, and I'm pretty sure the reason they moved it from Carter County to, Catawba? Is that where it's at? No, it's just Cherokee, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
Cherokee, North Carolina. So they moved the Cherokee tribe to the Cherokee, North Carolina. But I'm pretty sure they didn't move them. I'm pretty sure they just squished them, because Cherokee, if you look at the map of where their influence was, it was a lot wider than that. Anyway, my point being, Cherokee was pushed out of Elizabethton, and I'm pretty sure it was specifically so they could electrify it. Because if you look at old pictures of downtown Elizabethton, it does look pretty hopping. It looks like, you ever seen the old pictures? Like, if you go into I think it's like the mayor, courthouse, town hall, whatever it is, there's pictures hanging on the wall of the old 1920s Elizabethton, and that's when the parking is all going in one direction. It
looks really cool.
Model Ts lined up, and pretty sure the street lights were different. There's a lot of people in nice clothes walking around. So I guess having an electrified town at that point in time was pretty special, which is why there was a lot of people here.
I can't type right now.
With the proximity for it to be into Bristol too, because that giant ass sign that Bristol has over there was specifically because it was so early on in electric.
Well, you remember that sign that I showed you, the City of Electricity or something like that, the City of Energy, that was in one of the early episodes that we did, where we looked at the veterans in downtown Elizabethton, and now I can't find that picture. I did have it saved in there, but if you look at here.
Which one's that? Is that Bristol?
This is downtown Elizabeth. Let me pull it up full screen so the folks can see. It's on Pinterest, so I don't have a Pinterest account, so we won't look at that one. We'll find another one though.
There's a nice one here. Look at that.
These are all on Pinterest.
Oh, they're on Pinterest. Wow, yeah. Pinterest is just monopolizing.
All on Pinterest.
Well, I guess I could bitch at you because you could just make a Pinterest account.
Yeah, I could.
How old is that Denberg picture right there?
There's the City of Power.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me pull this up for the folks. Sorry. Well.
String fix.
There it is.
And you got roped into something else, didn't you?
There we go.
Where's that at?
I don't know, but that's the bridge that goes across the monument. But let me see if I can't get this on the screen for folks. It's not wanting to come up
here.
there.
Bridge that goes across from the monument, the one that has supposed to have the Christmas tree up top now. Is there a mountain missing from that picture?
Let's see. Oh, we don't have a screen capture on that camera there. So let's see here. If we can't get it to pull up.
No, I got you now.
It's not wanting to on this one either. We'll get it. Hang on.
Maybe I'll describe it to everybody. Very poetic.
I have to do it. It won't it doesn't let my hotkey work until I do it for the first time for some reason.
Scorpios have a soothing voice due to our natural charm from the universe.
Is that right? Well, that's the City of Power. That was when Wilbur Dam went in. That's when they started fashioning themselves. Yeah, that's the downtown monument. Yeah, it was made in 1911 is when that was put up, and then 1912 is when and you look here.
Isn't there more of a mountain here? Does it seem like a shit missing?
This is like Lynn Mountain. This is back. I wonder if this is back where these are the trees over there where the courthouse is, and the jail would be over here. The old courthouse would be right back over here behind this.
And
And
above
then
it would be the Christmas tree that's missing. But I swear to God, is this just where it's bad resolution pictures, this fog covered these mountains? Because that's not where that mountain ends.
yeah, it could be because it seems like really the mountain. I think it just is kind of.
It kind of looks like how the artifacting is a different gray, right?
Oh
there,
yeah, I
so
see what you mean.
it could be.
Well, for context, I've been looking at mud flood videos for about 2 weeks, so I'm overly paranoid about every picture I look at. So I don't even know if you're golf right now.
Might not.
You never can tell about these
You know
things.
how big the because I've never been on the other side of the Earth Dam up Carter County. How big is that compared to maybe Holston?
There's the other side of it. This earth dam is about 900 feet across. I forget Holston. Holston, I think, is quite a bit bigger than that, and so is Boone. Boone is actually one of the bigger ones. It creates hundreds of megawatts. I think 111 megawatts of power. So it creates almost twice as much as what Watauga does, which is the most. South Holston doesn't create as much electricity as you would think, but I guess Boone creates so much because Kingsport is right there, and they required a lot of power in the war effort. They actually started building Boone Dam, I think, in 1942, and they started building the one in Watauga in 1942, and Boone and South Holston, but then they put them all on pause while they went to do other projects for the war effort, and then they came and finished them, and starting in 1946, they started working on them again. That's when they started on Watauga again, and I think they finished all three of them up by 1950. So you talk about some quick
But
working
yet
guys.
They can't fill a bunch of potholes in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're doing basically, is filling them in. The holes in Boone Dam is what Dustin is referring to, where they found some places where water is leaking down underneath the dam, and they're basically filling it in with grout and then creating a concrete retaining wall to protect the base of the dam. And it's taken them, 8 years now since they've
Is this the one
lowered it?
that caused the lake to go down to begin with?
Yeah, this is why they drained the lake.
Every now and then
Lake.
I'll come out with a little bit, because I try to pay middle of the road here to make the show more interesting. But the one conspiracy theory that I have that I've been looking at the whole time that just does not seem right to me is they, like you said, it took them that long to like hot glue gun a dam together because it was going to be too expensive to fix it. But magically now that there's tourism coming here, lake's fine, guys. Let's pump that sucker back up.
Not only tourism, we've had a lot of people moving here, and the
That's what I'm
property
saying.
values have been going up.
Like because of that lake being lowered, the property value all on that lake tanked. Because you had literally just had like those houseboats just sitting on dry dirt with like trees growing up out of the sides of their deck and stuff.
You had a neat little shrubbery forest.
So maybe it was just good happenstance, positive timing for things just worked out and people are just buying up the poorest area of the world. But
Well, the
it just seemed like
TVA
they were just fixing it the same year people were deciding to come here.
The TVA says that it'll be back on track on December 7th of last year. They said it'd be back on track on July 22nd, or July 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking at having it back open as far as up to full capacity, as far as I know.
It looked good this year because I played a couple of the docks out there, and it looked really nice. If anybody's wondering about going out to the lake, it's way nicer than it's been in a long time.
Now, Boone Dam actually makes 114 megawatts. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 1,697 feet across, and that's compared to Watauga Dam's 900, if I'm not mistaken. There's a picture of Watauga from the air. And, well, it's not letting me do my thing again. Let me go over here. And there we go. There's Watauga from the air, from the earthen side, and I think we showed you that one. There's the town of Butler that was flooded to create. Yeah, it was a decent sized town.
I guess I always just kind of imagined it being like 15 log cabins or something.
Yeah, that's kind of what you think, but it was actually 750 families. It was an incorporated town. So it wasn't any, it was a little hamlet that had built itself up with some of the timber industry and, the agriculture.
So you can still see when the lake is lower, you can see foundations. There's still some of the roads that are still left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's another aerial view from the back of Watauga Lake. That's from a long time ago there. And this is, let's see, where's the flood control thing? I'm kind of turned around here. That's it right there. If you look right here, this is the big opening for flood control that Dustin was talking about. It looks like it's got something in it in this photo, doesn't it? It's usually,
It's a net.
is that what it is?
That's what it
Maybe.
looks like to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it the whole. I'm gonna call it the big field.
But they've built an observatory area
That's what's down in it. That's the biggest conspiracy of all.
right up
There's a
here.
giant Sarlacc down there.
That's what all the TVA
We
flood
gotta build
control
dams next to these things. They're making an excuse while there's a giant hole here.
contain the Sarlacc. Every now and then a bird will fall down in there and keep it happy. And,
Pieces.
yeah, exactly. We got Boone Dam. It was kind of the powerhouse there, as we mentioned. It provides electricity to Kingsport, Tennessee, which has the Eastman Chemical Company. It also has Holston Defense. It has big paper mill. So those would all have been, important industries to shore up at the time, especially after you'd just gone through a world war and your ability to create power was taxed to the limit, and they created all kinds of steam plants in addition to the hydroelectric plants at the time, just to be able to make enough energy to have their foundries going and all these high energy productions that they were doing to make sure that there was adequate supplies for the war. Here's another picture of the town of Butler before. If you're interested in this and you live in our area, probably a lot of people don't know about it, but they have a museum up in Butler called the Butler Museum, and it's kind of a memorial to the old Butler, and it actually has some pieces of the old Butler in there, some like the post office and part of the general store, and it kind of gives you an idea of what it was like in old Butler before the TVA flooded. And here you see the big frame they've constructed here, and while they're excavating, and you can see the size of this truck, this dump truck and this crane. These dump trucks over here, especially as they get closer to it, how big that thing is exactly. And that's where the Watauga River flooded, and that's where the Watauga River flowed, and they filled it up and made a hydroelectric dam there.
Out of a photographer's perspective, I like the composition, whoever shot that.
Yeah.
Because in the frame, you have the mountains like perfectly teed up.
Yeah, that's nice.
What if it's fake? What if it's like Tonka trucks down there? It's just like a ditch.
And all this stuff was here before?
Model Trank Godzilla. I don't know. I was saying that the whole thing's fake. It's just a picture.
Yeah. There's no dam. It's a hologram.
Conspiracy, it was a very short-lived one on the internet. The Asheville, North Carolina, didn't exist.
No, I've not heard that one.
There was a bunch of movies that kept getting made there, like The Hunger Games.
Hannibal got made there.
Group got a hold of it, and they were like, "This place doesn't exist." It's
I think I remember hearing some mild things of that.
yeah. So the response was, "Australia doesn't exist." That's how the internet works. The Butler Museum. I've never been up there.
So this is kind of they moved the general store up there. They got a slideshow here, and you go in the museum, you see some of the furniture, what it looked like to live in Butler, Tennessee before it was flooded. And then we get into the dam, and it tells you all about that. So if you're interested in that, go check out the Butler Museum. They got all kinds of cool stuff up there. And if I'm not mistaken, the guy who runs the place actually lived in old Butler and was he a child or a young man whenever they flooded it. He was, at least when I saw WJHL did a report on it a couple years ago. So that's where I'm getting that information. But it was a good little piece. You can find it on YouTube. But Joe, go check out the Butler Museum, butlermuseumtn.com. And you can learn all about the town that would not drown. And with that in mind, I think we're about to the end of my part there, my little spiel and little talk about the TVA. Let's get on into the next topic of discussion, and that is God Floods World. God Floods World, extra, extra, read all about it. It was throughout all the religions, was it not? Was it not made its way into every...
Instead of saying religions, I guess.
Or histories?
We'd say texts.
Okay.
Because one of my issues with... I guess the way I want to frame this is so people don't get confused. I have a habit of just flying straight into things and not giving context. I'm not trying to argue any kind of religion. I'm trying to argue that why do a lot of mainstream atheists nowadays refuse to accept that there was even a flood? I guess that's a weird one for me. Like, growing up, I was obviously on the other side, being taught that yes, there was a flood, and also here's the Bible, right? And now that but on the reverse, the atheists were arguing, no, there's not a God, and the flood's the stupidest thing ever because X, Y, and Z, being Noah can't fit all the animals on the boat. But as a kid, I wasn't allowed to argue, hey, but what if there's 5,000 other boats? Because that's a loophole for it. And I'm watching a weird sort of shift with the atheists now, because now they're denying the flood because it's in the Bible, and it makes them argue in a stupid way, the same way I had to argue sort of stupidly when they would say, you couldn't fit all the animals on one boat. I wasn't allowed to say, what if there's 400 more boats, simply because there's not 400 more boats in the Bible. Right? So it's weird to see people get hung in those same sort of... I remember, I think it was Dawkins used to use, he would talk about how to own Christians. He would say one of the easiest ways to own a Christian is to use their own set of rules against them, because you don't have to play by them. They're playing by a set of rules that you don't have to abide by. And now I'm kind of watching atheists have the same thing sort of happen to them, because they're denying an obvious flood because they don't want to accept that maybe something in the Bible might be true. And I just think that's very interesting. So I thought maybe we'd just look at some flood evidence.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is a lot of those same people
Believe there was a flood on Mars.
maybe. Well, I wasn't going to
There's
say that.
actually proof that, happened. Stuff, major flooding worldwide happened on that planet too.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Everyone's like, yeah, that's true. But then you're like, that happened here too. They're like, no.
Well,
Well-
dude, that's my Bigfoot argument. When people say simulation, I say, hey, about Bigfoot, and they go, nah, bro. It's like, okay, well, how about the simulation has a Bigfoot in it then? How about that? And he can turn invisible. But
I think
anyway.
he's an
Well, and then
being.
I mean,
Well, I'm not against Bigfoot being real. I just think it's funny that people won't accept Bigfoot, but will accept this is a Matrix, right? Because that's a much larger jump to conclude when they could both be true. What was you saying?
well, I was just going to say, in the event that Mars underwent an ice age the same way we did, and suddenly solar output was increased at a certain time, and the ice melted, a worldwide flood would be something that you would expect, especially since we did just have something called the Ice Age. I imagine there have been a lot of leftover ice, particularly at the poles. But I'm just kind of talking out my ass here. But we do see a lot of those same people who might say that the Bible is not true. There is not any evidence in there. Nothing in their accounts as evidence. A lot of them will point to things like the Epic of Gilgamesh, when pointing to the similarities between it and some of the stories in the Bible as evidence that the Bible is not the word of God for them, or
They're so busy arguing about if one of the book. They're so busy arguing that one book is true and one isn't, that they won't kind of just look at the similarities and kind of decide that maybe there is some shared history there. So one of the things I guess I admire about one of the more Eastern religions is they're not so much religions, they're more philosophies. And that kind of blew me away. I got talking to an Indian dude, met at a gas station when he used to buy Dr. Nuts at the same spot, and he was telling me that they weren't restricted from reading all the different books, because if it's a holy book, you should read it and then decide if it's bunk or not. And there's a lot of religions do not allow you to do that. And I think that's a bad spot to put your brain in, because it makes you argue things that you shouldn't be arguing. So like, instead of arguing whether or not the Quran is right, or whether the Bible's right, or whether the Bhagavad Gita is right, you could look at all three of them and go, is there a flood in all three of these things? I wonder if that's real. I don't know if there's a flood in the Bhagavad Gita. I was just trying to know the other one.
Yeah, just naming a book. I see. There. So I'm gonna stick this in the comments here. Well, maybe I am. I want to stick the Discord link in the video description right quick, so that way if you have something to say on it, you can join the Discord and hop in there. It'll just take you a second, and if you're not already joined, you just click on it and follow the prompts. You can get in there. If you've already joined our Discord, which a couple of people have, then you can just come right in. I'll be watching the audio channel and the chat for you, or you can just comment in the chat here on YouTube. But we would really like to hear what you have to say about some of this, if you have any ideas or anything to add to the discussion.
Flood that comment page.
That's right.
So yeah, that would be my point, is not so much. I guess that is my point. Why are we arguing that there's not it's weird to see people denying that there's a flood. Now, the only reason I got this brought up to me is I've been watching a lot of buried city videos, flooded cities, and in the chat, there's always a set of religious people saying there was a flood, and there's always, which But yeah, and then there's always some atheist people who are overly defending it, saying no, there's no evidence of a flood. It's just evidence of a climate change. And it's like, you should have been a lawyer, buddy. That's not a flood. It's climate change. You can think with the verbal Olympics you just did there, and they're required to do that because they can't believe something if it's in the Bible.
It's contradictory.
How they like to throw cognitive dissonance around, is that not like
It applies to
the
everybody.
the kettle black there?
And that's why I try not to do it too often, because I know I'm like Ralph Waldo Emerson very well, then I contradict myself. I accept it. I'm a walking contradiction. This is Herculaneum.
Oh, I'm not showing it to people yet, no.
Well, I got some pictures. I got more that I should have brought that I guess I can talk about before I show these. A pattern that I got to noticing when I was taking those $1.50 trips that Moose is so jealous of to different places is everywhere is buried. Like if you go to Chichen Itza in Mexico, the guide told us the first thing he told us, this is before I even got to watching like Ancient Aliens, before this sort of topic was mainstream. He said first thing he wanted to point to us was that there was another Chichen Itza under Chichen Itza. So they like not exactly, but there was another city under Chichen Itza, which is a lot bigger than just this pyramid here that you're looking at. There's a whole network of buildings around it. But there was one that they call the observatory, if you can find it while you're there. He said it's not built correctly. And he would know because his ancestors were Mayans. And he said that they built that building incorrectly just to get it up. And he really wishes people would stop saying the Mayans were extinct because they're there giving tours of their old city. So, kind of makes sense. And then London, if you look at London, you can find videos, you can find blogs.
Show us where you're talking about in the Chichen Itza here.
Oh, you can't see it.
Oh.
The tour guide said, if you can see that on the thing, I don't know if people can see it, but I'm pointing it here for you. This is Chichen Itza, the whole area, right?
Yes.
This is the wonder here of the snake pyramid or whatever.
Quetzalcoatl.
This is their ball court over here. He said that underneath all of this is another city that they just built this on top of.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard that.
The same thing in London. If you dig under London, you can find video after video of this, where when they renovate in London, every building is literally just built on the roof of another building.
There's a show, I think, on the History Channel that goes under, and they actually show you a lot of that.
And New York City's the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you can find evidence of all kinds of crazy stuff. Like Chattanooga, you can find where they raise the street by 16 feet in one area. And I'm not saying you don't raise the street, raise the sidewalk, sorry. That you don't raise things if it's in floodplains and things of that nature. But whole cities that are like, if you look at London, there's people that are finding like multiple buildings on top of buildings. And that gets you thinking, why is there that much dirt? So I guess my point there is, if there's that much stuff there in modern times, we're building crap on top of crap on top of crap. It's very possible that things have been flooded. There's just too much sediment on top of everything for there not to be. For example, you ever had a fish tank?
Yes.
You put those rocks down there, and you can put like the little vibrating treasure chest that blows the bubbles and stuff. If you put, it doesn't matter what you put in a fish tank. If there's just enough vibration, eventually it settles to the bottom. If you use the sandy stuff, right? So if you can imagine the whole world flooding, Chichen Itza gets buried. Because how else would it happen? Except for maybe volcanic eruption. I guess that's a possibility too.
So you were mentioning the city of London. I was trying to find some photos of that. I found a story here from the Washington Post with that's all about the Roman city that was built there, that London was built on top of. And it's taken a while for these photos to pull up. I was going to show them to some people. What's he say?
It says the flood was real. I thought about Halo.
I've never played Halo, so I don't get the joke.
They're doing, in case Crow cares, they're doing Halo tournaments in Bristol at the Gamers Lounge now.
So that's a drawing of what the ancient city on the Thames may have looked like, back when the Romans ran that area before the Anglos and the Saxons there took it over.
I guess my point isn't that that London was buried by the biblical flood. I'm just saying, if it's possible to bury current London.
Well, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, continue. Sorry.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I wasn't.
I had my head in like a little loop, and I was like, I gotta get this out.
No, I got you. I got what you meant, but I'm glad you explained it just in case anybody else was misunderstanding you. But You got some other pictures here that you wanted to show us.
Okay,
Which
I'll
one would you
go
want to start with there?
Go to Herculaneum.
Okay, let's check out Herculaneum.
This is fairly close to Pompeii because Pompeii is way more popular because Pompeii is a much bigger city and it's way closer to Vesuvius. But if you go to Pompeii, you're looking at, you probably need 2 days to actually see Pompeii because it's pretty damn big. Herculaneum though is probably more about the size of, if I had to guess, about the size of Elizabethan. But if you can see down here on the bottom where this metal is, that's where the original shoreline is.
Okay.
And up under here, there's still skeletons made of ash up in there. So that's the reason they know that it was, I don't know, I guess it was volcanic ash when Vesuvius erupted. But everything was still intact. And if you look up above, if you'll scroll, up, that's where the current city is.
Okay.
So when they were doing excavation is when they started finding all these things. So I thought Herculaneum is a better example because Pompeii is so far out that you can't see this. See how stark that is? That right
Levels.
That up there is the modern city that's next to Herculaneum.
Right.
And all that is underneath them.
Right.
And it makes you wonder.
And they had to dig down to find it, right?
They had to dig down to find all that. And you can go down there and take a trip down in. There's a statue of Apollo.
Well, I imagine the lava flow had something to do with I mean, if you had these guys ash, was there lava flow right here? Or?
I have no idea.
From Mount
Nothing's burnt,
Vesuvius?
though.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. There's nothing's burnt. It was just covered. So
Well, I
it
guess
had
the
to be just volcanic
pyroclastic
ash.
flood pyroclastic flood and the ash would have killed everybody down there. Or-
Pompeii's the same way. There's still frescoes. They've got wooden doors that they put in plexiglass to keep them preserved now. So it couldn't have been very hot, or that wood would have combusted.
Is this your photo that you took personally?
It's not. Actually, it's got some really good ones, but I didn't want to bother. Herculaneum is if you ever take a trip to Italy, if everything ever calms down, Herculaneum is actually a better and easier hike to explore than Pompeii.
And I'm definitely envious of that because
Can you
Italy
go
is definitely
into
one of my
that
places.
Yeah, just walk on it. And if you ever go to Italy and you don't want to go to Greece to see the giant ones, there's a place called Paestum, and it's basically the old Greek temples, but there's no tourists because it's not in Greece. People don't care. You go to Italy to see Roman. You go to Greece to see Greece, but there's giant Greek ruins in Italy that you can go see. Paestum was not very populated at all. Those are fantastically large.
What next, Tim?
Go over to, what is the next one? I can't remember the name of it.
You got Lion City
That's
underwater.
Lion City. That is in China, or next to China. And that is only one picture I chose. The reason I chose that particular picture is because, look right here. Do you see that?
What am I looking at? The bull?
The bull. That's
Yeah.
that's a Saturn worshiping symbol that you can find
And
in
that's the
Egypt
sun.
and
That's the
ancient
sun.
Sumerian.
Saturn too. That's a.
Mm-hmm. So why is there an ancient Sumerian statue next to China?
Well, we do find a lot of the symbols worldwide that
Yeah.
are very similar to one another, both in representation
Well, if we're being
and
honest,
meaning.
This is probably connected to the swastika, the solid cross, because the swastika, the bent ends represent the cycle of the seasons. Because if you look at it, it looks like it's the Big Dipper moving this way. And that's what the swastika actually represents. That's a very, very bastardized symbol now, thanks to Mr. Adolf. But that's what it originally meant.
Damn you, funny mustache man.
Dude, I was watching a history on something with Netflix. And there was a guy whose name was Adolphos. And I was wondering why they kept calling anybody's full name. I was like, oh, wait.
You're like, oh wait.
old Shitler ruined that name Adolf forever too, didn't they? And there was the others. You can find a lot of pictures of Lion City. That was just the one that struck me because it had that bull in it. But that's also the one that has lots of the stone statues. And I guess what strikes me about Lion City is if that was a violent flood, that stuff would have been destroyed if it was a giant wall of water.
Mm-hmm.
So that had to be, on some level, not as catastrophic as you might think, you know?
This is from Graham Hancock's website. This is a city that was found underwater in Japan.
Which one's it?
Let's see, what's it called? Let me look here.
There's hundreds.
Yonaguni here.
Yonaguni.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah, there was something really recently in the past little bit.
less than 10 years ago.
Because there's other ones we can think of too. These are the ones that are specifically underwater. Because what's the one Pumapunku that was buried?
Pumapunku is not underwater, I don't think. Is
No,
it?
it's under soil.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there's another one they found fairly recently in Russia. I think it's called I can't remember how you pronounce it now, but it's they found a coin from the Ottoman Empire, and they were like, we think something might be under here because that's not supposed to be here. And they found a series of buildings.
Yeah, Pumapunku was buried with soil. So, but you got to think Pumapunku. They reckon it was,
What was the one that
few
had all the
thousand years
ancient-
ago.
that had all the animal artifacts and stuff that was intentionally buried?
I'm not sure.
know the one you're talking
Tijuana or something. I always hear the dude with the crazy hair sticking up like Vegeta's talking, and it makes me aliens. Vegeta hair. Look, that looks like red brick.
He wishes he had Vegeta hair. Yeah, it does. It's a pretty good high resolution photo they've got here.
Man, look at this.
I can't drag and drop it,
factory
unfortunately.
stamp, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's that same shape over and over again.
And they say that's sharp enough you can cut yourself on these edges that they're.
It's like giant Legos.
That's kind of what it looks like. It's like somebody's playing Minecraft.
Wasn't there one? There's one of them that was out there, like how they lined it up. They actually hypothesized, since it's pretty much proven on like a lot of specs that, we've had great technologies in the past, that they were actually like lasers. They were like cutting lasers to make.
It sure looks like it about, yeah, if you look at this one, we find this block, I know exactly what Dustin's talking about here.
Yeah.
The mystery of Pumapunku's precise stonework, but you can see these angles right here.
That was pretty broken off.
It's had pieces broken off, but you can look at it.
They've taken like what is it called? The angle. They've taken the actual rulers and shown you how the holes are precisely lined up and how they're perfectly routed out.
We might even find that on further down this article here.
That one. What if that was just wood though?
We've also found drill marks, drill cores from ancient days that.
How thin that is. Computer says no zoom.
No zoom for you. The zoom Nazi.
Look at that. Makes you what if that was just wood?
There we go.
Petrified.
I'll bypass
As dumb
it.
as that might sound.
Cheat.
It looks too much like. It doesn't look like petrified wood though.
No, it wouldn't.
Petrified wood still has you can see the fibers and the rings and a lot of it. It just looks like concrete.
But what if it was just concrete then? Like, what if the secret to the ancient pyramids is they were just making concrete out of sand?
Well, I don't know what to say to that. I guess somebody might figure that out if that's all it was. I don't know.
I did hear someone speculate something about that it was actually done similarly to that.
The issue with sand that you run into is the desert sand. They actually use sand in all concrete. Almost all concrete, but in concrete because they need something to grab, but they suck it off the bottom of the ocean floor because the sand that blows around in the desert gets rounded off by all that constant wind motion. So they have all that sand, and actually they have to have all their sand for their islands and stuff imported, or they can't build because round sand won't grip. And I don't know, maybe because all that sand, like if you go out in Midwest and you start looking down at all that desert, a lot of that stuff really looks like ocean to me. And probably was. I don't know the history of it. But wouldn't you think all that sand out there floating around used to have angles, though?
Yeah, eventually, yeah. So it was bigger rocks and it just gets eroded down further and further.
I was going to try to find you something in here.
What's that?
This is a book on the Great Pyramid from. I can't find it. I don't have time. I don't have it pulled up.
Magical Egypt? Is that what you're trying to quote? No, I've not watched it. Joe Rogan tries to get people to watch that all the time.
No. It was basically just going to be on the how it seems a lot of the stuff is speculation because that was basically where a lot. That's a book that was written in the late 1800s. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of the ideas that went on through the 1900s and were taught came from the study that book was based on, and it had a lot of hypotheses that were basically taken as fact as far as where the stone came from and when the pyramids were actually constructed, and some of it was based on such simple evidence as they found a stone in Khufu's era that marked that agreed with or had the same quarry marks as stones that they found in the Great Pyramid. So they said, well, this shows that Khufu had constructed the Great Pyramid. And to me, what if he took apart another building and constructed something out of it? What if they copied the quarry marks?
Well, that's a very possible thing.
There's all kinds of things that, you come across and you see the Great Pyramid and, you're a craftsman and you see those quarry marks on it and, you pull the stones from the same quarry and you copy the quarry marks. I mean, I don't know that that's what happened. I'm just saying that's something plausible that there are several other explanations for why they would have the same marks other than, well, that must have been constructed in his day. And there's no evidence of any other construction undertakings like those at that time. And there's lots of other bits of evidence in there, but I just thought I was hoping to show you in the book so that I could show you kind of how thin the evidence that was taught as fact was in several different cases in there. But in any event, there's a lot of similar stories around the world when we get to ancient ruins, whether they be underwater or under the mud. And then there's a whole, you were talking about the mud flood. For those who,
I think that's I really kind of kicked that conspiracy group in the nuts when it first came out because I didn't like the terminology, and unfortunately, in the conspiracy, I'm gonna call it alternative history group too, because those people don't even like to be called conspiracy theorists. They think that's a bad word. Mud flood got a bad term because I thought a lot of time what I do immediately when I find a conspiracy is I try to find a few debunkers to figure out if maybe I'm just wasting my time on some like real crazy posting, and it seemed that a lot of the mud flood people were just using these buildings that had the lower till window kind of peeking out like this, as evidence that buildings were built at a taller point at one point in time. But as you start looking over, it really does seem like the landscape has been buried in a lot of ways. Whether they're keeping it a secret or not, maybe they just don't know. But there's stuff buried everywhere.
well, you get into a lot of those conspiracy theories, as they're called. I don't know if I would call that a conspiracy theory, as we talked about in the last episode. We mentioned the term. I don't think we brought up that it was created actually on record by the CIA to discourage people from listening to someone who was trying to expose, whether it be the CIA or the military-industrial complex or a politician that was being protected. They used the term conspiracy theorist as to derive them, and to basically group anyone who was bringing up alternative ideas for something other than what was given to them by the government or the news media. They were to be dismissed because they were just conspiracy theorists who were, and the term's been used repeatedly over the years to tell people that they should dismiss someone by quote-unquote official sources. But is that even really a conspiracy theory? Because
Is which one?
the mud flood, I mean, because isn't it just deciding that,
It depends on how far you take it, because my argument is,
I guess they're saying people would have had to cover it up.
well, I guess I need to put this
Literally and figuratively.
I guess I had to put this pin in here because just like, for example, the flat Earth community, which I guess I want to brace that one day just to have a good video. It's segmented. Like you've got different groups in that community. With the mud flood, a lot of the people that are doing the mud flood videos are also people that are really into Tartaria, if you've never gotten into that one.
Lemuria, Tartaria,
well,
and the
they
other
insist.
Atlantean.
Well, Tartaria, they insist that Tartaria was not as far back as they think that they deleted 1,000 years from history, and that some of the buildings that you're looking at aren't near as are way older than they say, and that they stamped a fake established date and just said, yeah, we built this. And I'm not arguing that, but that's a lot of what they're arguing is when the first American settlers got here, they didn't just start building this stuff, that they just dug most of it out.
And don't the folks who, now I'd like to look into this one a little bit just because I'm interested in, don't the World's Fairs?
That's what got it really sparked, because the World Fairs we don't make sense. Either we had a lot of money just to burn at one point in time on really stupid stuff for very few people because they seem impossible.
Well, I mean, we're not going to do that on this episode, but I do want to. I mean, we're not going to get too far into that because I want to get back on track with what you're showing us, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to look real quick at the Chicago World's Fair in, when was it? 1893?
1933.
I think it was 1893 was the one I'm thinking of. Where they built this city, the World's Columbian Exposition, as it was called.
Lots and stuff.
This one right here, or this one?
Any of them. They're all unbelievable.
Okay, well, it's called the Columbian Exposition, the World's Columbian Exposition. And we know that Columbia Society and Columbus and the whole idea of Columbia worship.
It's the dove and... Well, keep going.
Well, I was just going to say that symbolism appears throughout the history of our country, the United States, the District of Columbia, and you see this is very, this is 33. That's right. And this is very similar to the Statue of Liberty here.
Well, okay, we need to do Statue of Liberty at some point because I got to make my case that I think it's Apollo. But go ahead.
Well, it's been attributed to many different goddesses, including Queen Semiramis and Diana, and I've heard Apollo too. But
maybe not that one though, because I don't know. I have to see the front.
Well, it's hard to say without seeing a whole lot of it because you see the spear and you see the doves
These
there.
buildings over here to the left, I see you got the American flags over here to your right.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the left, you see these crazy looking Russian spires. What is that all about?
Well, the World's Fair, it often showed what different parts of the world were like. So,
A cow?
but here's the thing: they built supposedly they built 100 acres of this stuff. They've built 100 acres of this stuff. That's probably a bull statue there. Yeah, it is. It's two giant bull statues representing what?
There you go.
Saturn.
Well, yeah. Saturn on top. Yeah, I think I've even with the steer, but yeah, maybe.
But
Is that pineapples on its side? Roman. I'm stretching it there. Go ahead.
well, but this if I'm not mistaken, this entire complex was built in 2 years and took 100 acres of Chicago real estate and then was torn down after the fair was over.
And it doesn't make it. That's where the conspiracy comes in. What they say is it makes more sense if all these were here. What they did was bring in a team, fix them up to look real nice, and then kind of like a rebuilding ritual. Then they would just tear them down and say, "Yep, that was it." And that sounds crazy until you start looking at all these World's Fairs. Well, yeah, kind of hide the evidence of the old society or the old civilization that was here before we got here.
Well, hey, let's do this for an episode. Since this will give us a little time to research this one, but since the 1986 World's Fair was in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is just an hour and a half away from us here, for those of us who aren't in our area, let's look at for the next episode. We'll look into 1986 Knoxville World's Fair. That'll be our local angle, and we'll see what went on there and what kind of things were unveiled and what kind of attention that brought to the area. Well, we also have to remember again that Oak Ridge was, just a couple hours down the road from that, and it, allowed for some significant developments with energy and technology, which were often the things that were showcased in these World's Fairs. And let's also remember that military and technology that's used for the military is often publicly unveiled many decades after it's actually invented. Now, in the case of what was going on at Oak Ridge, that's a good example of when people say conspiracies can't exist. How many people were involved in the Oak Ridge creation of the nuclear bombs that were used to end World War II? Very many thousands of people were involved in that project, and nobody said a thing. So even that was not a conspiracy, but it just shows you that people can keep a secret if the right things are on the line, and if they have loyalty to a certain cause, they can keep a secret. And not only that, let's look at the biggest conspiracy in the world, Santa Claus.
We can look at Santa.
I mean, but just look, we all agree, and and everybody agrees. We don't tell the children, So to think that people couldn't keep their mouths shut in some cases, that a lot of things could be done, and people would find it in their best interest not to tell anyone for whatever reason, is just kind of absurd to think that could not happen, because we all know people do like to talk, but if people are threatened enough by the consequences of what happens if they talk.
Most people die out, and this is 1890
Yeah, that
something.
too.
There's nobody left alive.
Well, a lot of the people that worked at, think of all the people that worked at Area 51 and things like that, and you've had a couple of guys that have been willing to talk about their experiences there, and they all also say, well, I can only tell you so much, because they know what'll happen to them, or what could happen to them if they told more.
Real quick before we move on from the World's Fair, I will say that big dome in Knoxville is called the Sun Sphere. Is that correct, or Sun Dome?
Let's look it up.
It's that big one. And if the Simpsons get their way, because the Simpsons keep predicting stuff, apparently it's going to come down, because I'm pretty sure it fell in one of the episodes.
Is that right?
I think so.
Sun Sphere is what
There
it's
you go.
called.
Yeah. So there's a lot of sun worship and I guess if you want to call it Illuminati research. I don't know if there's anything to it, but that is called the Sun Sphere, and you find a lot of sun-related stuff. Just like which is where they start talking about the possibility of all that stuff being related to just celestial worship in general, which, you saw the bull earlier with the Saturn.
And they built that Parthenon replica in Memphis too. And then they got the great big pyramid in Memphis.
Well, Memphis is the capital of Egypt. So
named
it's supposed
after
to be
Egypt.
it's supposed to be along, what is that river right
You
there?
think my Bass Pro Shop?
The Nile, yeah, the Mississippi is the Nile of the Americas.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that though. Let's do that. I don't know if we'll do it next week for sure, but we could. Do you want to do that next week? You want to do the World's Fairs?
I know enough I know enough I could look up to get enough we could condense it for an interesting topic. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Next week we'll do the World's Fair, then we'll look at the Knoxville World's Fair and look at what kind of technological advancements were showcased in there and what kind of things that brought to our region. So that'll be fun. So we'll do what Tim suggested in the last episode and say, hey, here's what we're going to do next time.
Next time, we'll at least talk about World's Fairs, and well, I guess Cliff could come up with his other one because.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We'll do that the local, and we'll do the news roundup on Wednesday night, and we'll do this for the main show on Sunday. So let's go. We're an hour and 5, so let's try to wrap it up here in about 15 minutes. Let's get to the rest of Tim's stuff.
All right. Okay. If you look at is it showing it?
I can pull it up.
There you go.
This what next?
Yeah.
All right.
This is a picture of what's called the North American Craton. And if you look at the brown, that is the oldest spot of, I guess you'd call it land. But if you look at the lines, it represents, I'm pointing at it. If you look at the lines in the brown, that's the flooded middle. And if you look at the blue where the coastal plain is and stuff, you can see Florida down there. So the color isn't necessarily the water. But what I think is interesting about this is if you start looking at the... like, for example, the connecting points are interesting, number one, because that means at one point in time you could have walked from Tennessee all the way to Greenland. And then I find it interesting, too, if you look at this green spot where it says, I can't pronounce that first word, something accretionary belt welded to the North American continental margin within the last 600 million years. And then right there you have what's called the deformed craton, the pink. Right there, that's Death Valley, at the very end right before it hits the green. There's a spot in there that you can visit in Death Valley. It's the lowest point in the North American hemisphere. And essentially you drive in the middle of nowhere and then you walk into a giant hole that used to be an ocean. And it's not intimidating at first until you look up and see the sign that says this is where sea level is. And you're like, holy shit. And it looks pretty obvious. I mean, I don't want to be a geologist here. I guess maybe you could look up Randall Carlson stuff to figure this more out. But if you look at where... what is it called? Yellowstone National Park is where a supervolcano is, correct?
Badwater Basin. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there you go. Essentially, it's just salt water. You can actually take your foot. You're not supposed to, but you can see where people have done it, and you can crack that ground, and there's salt water about 4 or 5 inches below that dirt.
Why does nobody let you to look at their photos full screen on PC? I don't understand.
I don't know. Why are you still using PC, bro? Phone user, cringe. It's pretty wild. But what it looks like happened to me, like I said, I'm not a geologist, but it looks like that all got put. That was definitely an ocean at one point, and it all got pushed back at some point. And if you'll go when you go back to the Craton pic, that 600 million year recent addition is what caused that Death Valley to even be there to begin with. If you go to Colorado, outside of Red Rocks, there's a little museum there where they'll take you up the side of the hill on a little cart, and they'll show you dinosaur footprints that are walking vertically up the side of the hill. Mm-hmm. Because at some point in time they were saying they're walking in it, and then the earthquake just pushed it straight up. So our world's been traumatized by a lot of different stuff. And I guess that's just my point. Like, I'm wondering...
molded it to the person it is today.
That's right. It wasn't born like this, guys.
I guess my whole point is try not to argue stupidly. I mean, I've done it. Everybody's done it. But the stupid way of arguing is there's still a good portion of skeptics, atheists, whatever you want to call them, online saying that there was never a worldwide flood. And that's absurd. And I'm just saying, try to keep my own thoughts logical, and I know I'm not very good at it, but that's illogical to say that there was never a flood. It's just stupid. That's my only point.
Do you ever remember that episode of Unsolved Mysteries where they used this a photo similar to this? Of course, this is a satellite photo, mm-hmm. where they said they found Noah's Ark, and somebody claimed to have gone into... There's
a video online of somebody going into something.
Yes.
I don't know if it was actually it.
See, I didn't know if it was a reproduction, like a reenactment video, or if that was...
Like the one out in Kentucky?
Well, I didn't know, if it was a reenactment, but it was convincing to me as a kid, but I was probably, under 10 years old when I saw it.
You can find, there's several boats that they found in the ice that have been preserved, so I don't know if it was Noah's Ark or not, but you can definitely find those boats. There's videos, so...
Well, this is up at the top of the mountain where Noah's Ark was said to have landed in the Bible, on Mount Ararat there in Turkey. And this is, in fact, where in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, they showed an aerial photo of this same place and said that this was where it was. You can see the, what looks to be the bow of the ship right here. But they, apparently the guy who got in there never could get permission from the Turkish government to get back up there to go into it anymore. But this photo was from 2003, and it was got from a satellite and was called the Mount Ararat Anomaly. It's Digital Globe's QuickBird commercial remote sensing satellite, and it's just now been made public. Well, not just now, but it was made public less recently. But in any case, that kind of goes. There was this was from 2006 is when this article was. So,
do you understand like how goofy that is? Like I remember seeing this one that looks like a boat too. See what
this one?
Like they say it's like a more of a Viking build. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of interesting. I'll give them the term alternative researcher because they don't want to be called conspiracy theorists.
Evidently, that one there on Mount Ararat actually matches the dimensions mentioned, and the guy said that it actually had the same kind of what it was, a gopher wood or something like that it was supposed to have been constructed from.
Okay.
And he took a piece of the wood, and it was all based on this guy's word as I remember. But again, I was probably under 10 years old when I watched it, so I'm surprised I remember it at all. But yeah, I can see what you're saying as far as the Viking build there, but I don't know, that's kind of less convincing to me than others that I saw.
I'm saying there's multiple where they think that they found something. One of the ones I'd like to look at and show you and see what you get your opinion on it would be the what they call rebar structures, where people are looking at. You have to look at it from a top view, and they find these grid patterns in the ground. And the grid pattern, once they start looking at it, they realize it probably isn't a strange pattern. What it actually probably was the grid pattern in a dome coming down on itself and just forming a checker pattern in the ground.
What should I search to find that?
Oh, good Lord. I don't know. This is a recent one. You'd probably have to look up, because you're actually putting real words in there. God, what's the YouTube channel? Wise Up was the YouTube channel. I saw it on the very first time, but his videos he talks you through it. I'll find some videos for it for next time with these, because it falls right into the World's Fair sort of thing.
Okay.
What he was saying is those World's Fair cities are everywhere, and we've been building them for a really long time, and ever so often the world ends, and Big Daddy doesn't like us knowing that because it would freak the kids out too much, and that our modern technology isn't all that hot, that we've been building domes and giant boats and laser guns for a really long time.
I mean, you look at some of those cathedrals that were made in, gosh, I mean, even back in, even in the Dark Ages, some of the cathedrals that were built back then were those Gothic, and those are magnificent. And then you get into the Enlightenment and all that stuff, and they just got beautiful. I mean,
like, I don't want to keep bringing up Italy, but Herculaneum is down here, and then you've got the next city built on top of it. But if you go a hop 2 hours away over to Rome, I have no idea how they built everything in Rome. Like, just St. Peter and St. Paul's basilicas alone are an astronomical. You look at them, you're like, why did you do this? The church doesn't even make sense. They'll have 4 or 5 different sections where you could just have church, like pews set up with which one's this one? St. Peter's. This is the biggest one because that's their considered the first pope, and right out front there's a giant pecker.
As usual.
I like St. Paul's the best, actually, but I'm not sure if it's because it was the least visited, because when I first walked in, the guy was listening to Eminem, because he wasn't expecting anybody to walk in, and he quickly turned it to something else.
So you walk in there going down
This isn't even a fraction of it, though, I promise you. You can turn, if this was 3D, you could turn it in all directions.
I think it is 3D.
It would be, okay, hit this button there and see if it would turn it.
Oh, no.
No. It's the same, they build them to where you could just, and these, see where these columns are? In every direction, there's just these cubby holes of just marble embossed, golden trimmed luxury. It just doesn't make any sense. Even by today's standards, it doesn't make sense to do that. Unless it just wasn't that big of a deal back then, and they could just do that, and we suck. Well, 3D?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll
Which
work
one's it? The St. Paul's?
Yeah.
I mean, Rome was really conflicting for me because I'm over dramatic. I'm a melodramatic little turd boy. But like the whole time, it really made me sad because like the surrounding area of like Naples and stuff is a really poor place, and then you go into Rome and just in the Vatican, well, just not just Rome, but in the Vatican itself, there's just so much marble and gold just gathered into one spot. It's really really weird. And then you find out that the big Colosseum is actually made of red brick. You know, you think it's made of just these giant. It's just made of red brick, and then they overlaid it with the marble. Well, then they decided that they needed to make the Vatican bigger, so they just stripped all the marble off the side of the Colosseum that was being used as like a homeless shelter at the time, and just decided to make the Vatican bigger.
Sounds about right.
You got any thoughts on Notre Dame, or should that be a different one? As far as it burnt down, you know.
It's pretty fishy that they burn it down right before COVID, huh?
Mm-hmm. And there's some really strange pictures of Michelle Obama watching it burn from a boat on the river, just drinking wine while it burns behind her. Yeah. Yeah, it was like, she sure seemed to be, taking in the sight, but
Sitting there having like just the villain theme playing.
I mean, very sinister looking in these photos.
I've never seen that photo. That's wild though.
Well, since I've mentioned it, I've got to
I thought
find it.
Notre Dame was weird when it
I'll
was
probably have to
happening.
go this
Didn't
one.
it happen? Was it happening at the same time as the Yellow Vest protest, or was that right?
Yeah, no, it was during it. That was
Yeah, that was around the same time as the China protests and stuff too. So it's almost like they were like,
look when I typed
kids are getting restless.
when I typed Michelle Obama drinks
Drink
wine
wine.
or drinks, it said drinks wine Notre Dame, and they auto completed it too. And let's see what comes to the top here. You can see it in her glass here. All right, let's see the actual photo here. And I guess somebody could have photoshopped that, but she was there at the time, and you can see in her glass the smoke as she looks on, and whatever. But
That's weird. All the elites freak me out, and it kind of weirds me that people defend any of them.
oh, did I show that to people?
I don't know.
I don't even know. I don't
Look
think I
up
showed
Michelle
that to
watching
people.
9/11. No.
Oh.
Why is that not a meme yet? Like, why have people not like started like sliding like pictures of Trump, like laughing at her? Or...
Wouldn't I don't know.
You could
Is this
just
real?
use
Because
anything in that little glass right there.
yeah.
You know what seems weird to me, and like we don't have to pull this up. I'll send it to you on email when we get done.
She was on a boat there though, so at
yeah.
least lends some credence to it.
I think they use a lot of those tragedies to launder money.
Well,
Like right now, like, for
big
example,
insurance job.
All that money that was going towards, I guess we'll call it the honkening.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that money never got recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I don't know if they're doing it. I've kind of unplugged. I've been busy, but you're going to see a lot of people trying to get money to the Ukrainians, right? And I'm wondering how much of that money just won't even get anywhere near to it, and how many of those charities are just frauds. I'll show you a video right here, and you tell me. You can bring it back up Wednesday. I want to show you so you'll. This is somebody posted this today.
Right.
Right, that's a photo op, is it not?
No, yeah, you see a lot of that.
Does that not look like it's a scene straight out of Wag the Dog when they
Yeah.
were making the fake girl run from the Armenians and stuff? That's a photo op, is it not? And I know we can pull that up on the next. But look what I'm saying.
There's
Like,
several of them.
Yeah, we'll get into that on the Wednesday show, folks. We're going to be back Wednesday night at 10. Like I said, it's going to be something kind of like, if you do the church, if you go to church, kind of Sunday and Wednesday, right after you get home, kick up before your work, go to bed and join us. We're going to do news and current events shows every Wednesday, so we'll kind of get into some of the Ukraine stuff and kind of what happened in Canada, and we'll look at a couple local stories, and we'll do all that Wednesday night at 10, and we'll kind of keep our episodes separate from that. We'll do the news and current events through the week, and then we'll keep our episodes on the weekend where we talk about a particular topic that we've had a chance to look into and research, and we want to present some information to you and have a discussion about it. So we hope you'll participate with us. And if you're seeing this video after the fact, go ahead and comment on it and tell us what you thought of it. If we missed anything, if there's something that you want to add to I'm sure I missed something because we're doing this an hour and 20 minutes. I probably watched 5 hours of documentaries and read for 5 hours about the TVA to get ready for the show. So there's all kinds of stuff I could have missed. So if you think there's something important that I left out, or you want to just add something to the conversation, go ahead and throw that in there on the comments. Again, we have the Discord open. I'll put the link in the descriptions every time. These are only going to be active, and I'm only going to be monitoring while they're live, but you can still leave us messages. But if you want to jump on and get in the voice chat and talk to us as we do these shows, you can do that. We also will have Skype going. I'm just doing Discord right now because it just does voice, and the computer, even though I have pretty good internet speed, it just seems to like it better to, just have one thing going with it at a time. So for right now, we'll do Discord, and I probably should kind of hardwire. I've got my PlayStation hardwired, the important things, so that I don't get, glitched out and die when I'm playing Call of Duty for, internet issues. But for the computer and the cameras, everything's running on Wi-Fi. So we're kind of at the mercy of that technology, as sketchy as it can be sometimes. But I thank you for joining us tonight as we got into the flood. We have a lot of interesting things to talk about every week, and this week was no different. I thought the flood was a good thing to get into, especially the way it affected our area, and as it continues to. I mean, our schools were just out Friday for a flood here in Carter County because all the creeks were overflowing. Not much the TVA can do about that.
I've just watched them over the years because I went to Untitled, and over the years, as the flooding, because you remember it would snow sometimes and melt real quick, then you have heavy rain. The level of flooding is so up and down, it's really hard to predict. And so up Stony Creek, what they've done over the years is just slowly beef it up to what the last worst one was.
Reinforce all the bridges.
Did you ever live up Stony Creek?
I lived in Blue Springs, yeah.
Okay, did you? Okay. Anybody up Stony Creek? A topic that I would like to discuss at some point, as hyper local as it may be, is how everyone up Stony Creek probably has some level of, I'm not going to say PTSD, but mild irritable trauma would be the best way I could put it. I didn't realize this, that me and my wife were talking, and I never realized that the entire time I was growing up, I've never not known what it's like to have road construction until I was like 18 and moved out. Because when I was at Hunter Elementary, they started widening that 4-lane. They were pushing people. You think about it, it never occurred to me. Like, they started pushing houses back, they were moving businesses, and they turned the 2-lane into a 5-lane, really, is what it is, and it bottlenecks. But they took that sucker all the way from right where the bridge is, because they made that bridge bigger first. I remember
it used to be an old green, one of those old steel bridges there.
Yeah, I was still in a high seat in a van, watching them remodel the bridge going towards Elizabeth and from Bristol.
I wish they hadn't torn the old ones down, though, man. I wish they left them up for walking bridges.
I know.
But I don't. They were literally road construction for the first 19 years of my life, and think about that. Like,
well, it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Well, man, think about it took them, let's say 20, just to be safe. 25. Let's say 25. 25 years to build a road that essentially goes from Food City to Shady Valley.
Mm-hmm.
How many man years were spent on it? That just blows my mind when you think, because that's not a very large. I guess it is a giant achievement considering how many rocks and people had to move all that stuff. But when you can start considering pyramids and skyscrapers,
or on just a grander scale, I don't know the exact amount of years, but what about the actual highway systems? They were completed nationwide and
the core of the interstate highway system was created in 2 years. The basic coast to coast network for military purposes that they wanted to be ready to be able to move troops quickly in case of a land invasion in the United States. That took 2 years to have the whole thing set up to where basically they could get anywhere in the country.
See? It's
okay, well, first that blows me away they did all that in 2 years, and but I guess what I was trying to get at is our grasp of time is really, I don't know, it's not very good, because it took them 20 years to build roads, and those roads are either going to be there or not going to be there for a really long time, and then I'm going to turn into a pile of manure, and somebody's going to fertilize a plant with me. And so it's just really strange. For example, you just showed Chichen Itza again. There's a city under that city that we now just go take tourists to, when once upon a time that was like a city capital. I think our grasp of time is very weak, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think you're right. Folks, if you're still with us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. We had somebody, our first unsubscriber the other day after we did our gun video, unfortunately. I guess I guess we lost somebody there, but that's too bad. We've picked up a few more since then. Help everybody get us to 100 subscribers. We need 16 more. It'd be good to have 100 people.
If we
in here
get to 100 subscribers by next month, Cliff will shave his head.
I'll shave my beard. No, I already did that. But yeah, it would be much appreciated if you would hit the like button, if you'd hit the subscribe button, if you'd hit the notification bell. That way you'll know when we go live and you can comment with us. If you're watching this after the fact, we'd love to see you this Wednesday at 10 and next Sunday at 10 p.m. We'll be live as always. We give you a few minutes to listen to a song we made called The Men Behind the Curtain, but let everybody pile in and get the chance to watch the show before we actually start. So when you hear that song coming, it's time to get in here and kick your feet up and get ready to, if nothing else, just listen to our conversation. But we hope you'll join us. And I guess with that, we'll see you next time when we're going to talk about, for episode 26, the World's Fairs. So, sound good, guys?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll see you then. Now, I guess I have to